Thank you all so much for joining us for the Nebo Company's first webinar in our Smart Strategies for Talent Development series. Our topic today is investing in the right people at the right time, and it will be presented by our CEO, Kate Abner. Before we begin, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Izzy Mertens, and I'll be your host today, and I'm also the Client Experience Manager at the Nebo Company. I just want to give you a few guidelines on how to best participate in today's webinar. At 2 points in the webinar, you will have the opportunity to vote in a poll. When the time comes, I'll let you know, and a poll will pop up on your computer screen, and at that point, simply click in your answer. Another piece of participation is to type in any questions that you might have. You have 2 ways to do this. On your screen, you should see a Q&A button or also a chat button. Please type in your answers to us, and at the end, we'll save time to answer questions. If you don't get a response from us, we'll email you one after the webinar. Finally, if you have problems at any time during the webinar, please feel free to send me an email at imartins@nebocompany.com. I also want to give you just a little bit of background about who we are. The Nebo Company is a leadership development firm located in Washington, D.C. Nebo was founded in 2004 by Kate Abner. The Nebo Company is named after Lake Nebo, a hidden lake in the Adirondack Mountains. In this pristine setting, Kate experienced an unforgettable sense of deep connection, creativity, and inner peace as a child. Leaving the lake, she wondered how to hold on to that feeling of inspiration in everyday life. To us, Nebo is a beautiful metaphor for centered, resilient leadership. We each have a lake within, a center point in which we can access the resources needed to lead with courage, grace, and purpose. The Nebo Company works at the intersection of strategy development, leadership, and culture. One way to think about our work is to consider the questions here, which point to specific ways in which we work with our clients. For example, our work with visioning answers the question, what would it do for your organization if you could see the future? We help companies articulate a clear and compelling vision, one that can be used for planning and execution. We also work with clients who want to align their culture with their mission in ways that engage and excite employees. After almost 15 years of developing vision with leadership groups, we've come to appreciate that once you see where you're going, you need to build a strategy for how to get there. So we ask the question, how will you realize your vision? And we work with our clients to build achievable strategic plans. Finally, at the heart of our work is leadership development and coaching. When you think about where you're trying to go as an organization, you might ask yourself, are your leaders ready and able to lead together towards the future you envisioned? In most cases, a bold vision and a good strategic plan require growth and development from leaders at all levels of the organization. That's where we work with you. Today, we are delighted to share insights from almost 15 years of work with leaders. Our topic is investing in the right people at the right time, and I'd like to introduce Kate Abner, who will be our speaker today. Kate Abner is the CEO and founder of the Nebo Company and founding director of Georgetown University's Institute for Transformational Leadership, where she also serves on the faculty of the Leadership Coaching Program. Kate also served as the Chief People Officer at Kaiser Associates. Formerly a change leader in higher education and international business, Kate specializes in helping leaders transform their own leadership, organizations, and outcomes through passion, commitment, communication, and vision. Kate, I'll turn it over to you. And Kate, I think that you might be muted. So if you want to take a second and unmute, there you go.
Sure. Hopefully you can hear me now. I was just saying that we're actually going to make slides available, and we can also share an article with you that captures the content from this. So as we get started today, I want to talk for a moment about the kinds of experiences that I think you are probably having as you think about this topic of right investment in the right people at the right time. And I'll move us back a page, actually. I want to start here with the kinds of comments and questions that people bring to me. I often hear that these kinds of statements from our clients. People will say, I know what top performers look like, but how do I create more of them across the organization? We might have some really talented people, but not enough of them operating at that level. Or perhaps should we offer resources when people get promotions, or should we focus on investing in key people with some issues to address? Are we trying to solve our problems, in other words, with talented but potentially challenging folks who could use some development, or should we focus on those high performers and those high achievers? The last quote is, I have limited dollars for developing our people. It seems like coaching should be for senior leaders because of cost. Is that the right assumption? And so we're going to dive into these questions and questions like these over the course of the next several moments. And I'm eager to share with you what we've learned over 15 years of doing this work. As I think about how we at Nebo work with our clients, I've really begun to appreciate the amount of time we spend at the very beginning, really digging into what is the best use of resources, which are the best investments, and who should we be investing in. So that's really where we're going to go next. So we'll start with what seems like an obvious question, but why invest at all? And there's so many good reasons for it, and some of them are here. Certainly we invest in learning and development so that we can attract outstanding candidates. We see that with the millennial generation, and actually I want to say every generation, there's a great eagerness to learn and to see work as a place of learning and growth. Many top candidates are looking at how will my career unfold, what will I learn, what experiences will I have. So certainly that's one reason. To develop the necessary mindsets and skill sets and capabilities that will make the organization or the company run well. And I think that we often see, particularly with growing organizations, that the organization is growing rapidly and people may or may not be keeping up with that kind of growth or change. To strengthen teamwork and collaboration, I always think that collaboration is one of those great ideas that seems like it would be easy, but it's actually challenging. And so, you know, we often find ourselves called in to help teams work more effectively together, or to learn really how to be a cohesive team. To retain those talented people, to grow aligned leaders who understand the business, culture, vision, and strategy. And we really get a lot of requests for work. People are asking us, you know, help us help our leaders be more systems thinkers. Making the connections between the organization as a whole, the strategy, the direction of this business, and their work and their management and their development of others. And so really helping people not just be good at what their job description says, but actually aligned with where the organization's going. And then the last one is kind of my favorite, reform talented but flawed contributors. And we get a lot of this where people will ask, you know, how do we get, you know, Joe to change the way he operates? He's so critical to our business, but he's actually not working effectively with others. And we do a fair amount of work to help those talented people become self-aware and become conscious of the kinds of impact that they're having, and also how else they could operate. So many good reasons to invest in leadership development, and this is not a comprehensive list. This is just a few ideas. Overall, we want to say that the reason to do it is to build and sustain a strategic competitive advantage. And I think we've come to appreciate that there are a few real differentiators of businesses and organizations. Your people is your strategic differentiator, and the experience that your customers, your clients, your members have with your people really shapes what happens next for your organization. So very good reasons to invest in talent. You'll see the quote at the top of the page, and this is actually from the cover of David White's book, Crossing the Unknown Sea, Work as a Pilgrimage of Identity. It's one of my favorite books. And the quote is, work is the place where self meets the world. And I often find myself thinking that although we finish up at university and we get jobs and we go into the workplace, the learning continues. And we're not automatically good at or going to learn the things we need to learn to be successful. Work is the place where the learning happens and where we are tested and where we begin to discover who we are as adults and as professionals. It's also the place where we get feedback. We have challenges and we have to grow. And so all of these things combined, to me, really create a compelling case for investing in leadership development. So what should you invest in? Well, you have options and a lot of flexibility as you design. And again, this is not a comprehensive list, but it's a pretty good one. And we would love you if you want to send your additional ideas by way of chat. We'll collect them and share them back. But training, stretch assignments, mentoring, sponsorship, individual leadership coaching, executive coaching, group or peer coaching, and team coaching. Some of you might be thinking, holy cow, I didn't realize there were 4 categories of coaching. There are more, but I think those are the ones that we tend to work with. Conferences and seminars, usually those are things we go away to. Classes, courses, and workshops, these might be run in-house. Cohort-style programs, these are the programs where there's a series of courses, and often it combines coaching for each participant. Cohort-style programs are more intensive and usually happen over a 6 to 12-month period. And web-based learning. And I think that, given all of the options and flexibility that you have, it's very interesting to think about where you want to invest and spend your resources. So one question someone's asking is to delineate between group or peer coaching and team coaching. And I would offer to you that team coaching is for an intact team, we would call them, who have a shared mission, whether it's the senior leadership team of the organization or could be a project team or a cross-functional team with an important initiative, but they have a common purpose and they need to deliver a result, and to do that, they've got to work effectively together. The group or peer coaching is often when we bring a group of people together who might be at a peer level within the organization. They aren't necessarily a team, and they don't necessarily have to produce something together, but using the group coaching process, we actually combine the powerful skills of coaching, which are listening, inquiry, and increased awareness in a group setting. This is a great way to develop people at the middle stages of their careers, and also to build sort of a community of learning at a particular level or within a particular function. A group coach, like a team coach, will work repeatedly with that group. And what we've sometimes done is combined maybe a series of 3 classes with 2 group coaching sessions. So just to give you a little bit more information about that. I would also want to delineate, while I'm doing it, between individual leadership coaching and executive coaching. And they are very similar in terms of the structure, but I would say the depth and the complexity of the issues of the executive might necessitate different strategies and approach from the coach. It could be more intensive, could be more frequent. I find myself doing a lot of executive coaching in 2 or 3 hour intensives with my client, because it really helps them sort of catalyze movement. So I would say the intensity is greater, and there may be some additional features. So I'm going to keep going here and talk a little bit about other options that you have. So the question next is, so in whom should you invest? And I think when I look at this question, it's a hard one, because we really could invest in everyone and anyone. I think there's a case to be made that everyone in the organization is worthy of investment. The list on the left is really about the kinds of things we need people to be good at, right? So we need people to be good at establishing culture that aligns with the mission. That's the job of senior leadership, and it trickled down and carried through to the management level. The job of setting direction, and you do that with vision, and you do that with strategic plan. You need people who can develop strategy and who can manage the people, the policies, and the processes. You need people who can achieve daily operations effectively, and people who are really focused on getting things done day in, day out, and who are good at it. And so the question I would have for you is, who is essential to the success of this organization, and which group or which individuals are in need of development at this time, given where we are as an organization? One thing that I sometimes see is that we might start by working with the executive team or the senior leadership team. We might work with them for 2 years and then find ourselves over the next 2 years working a layer down, and then actually doing more work with the entire organization. My point simply is that you're going to find a starting point that really gets at the critical places where you feel like you need greater strength, or you need to really invest in, often it's that layer of managers or rising leaders who we feel like, boy, we'd love to retain them. We really need them to see differently and operate differently. Let's really make an investment there. Sometimes it really is at the senior leadership team or executive team level, and often that's when there's a lot of change, or perhaps a lot of change on the team itself. Sometimes it's really about providing training for individuals who need some basic training, just so that everybody's operating from the same standard or baseline. So the answer to the question really lies with you, but I think it's really interesting to understand that your investment levels may change over time depending on which groups are most critical or where you see the greatest needs. So we want to give you a group poll here and offer you the chance to tell us a little bit, and we'll share back what we learned from you. Who are your priorities right now? Is it those entry-level employees, rising managers, rising leaders, rising executives, the work teams, leadership teams, executives? Could be affinity groups, and by that I mean usually groups coming together around a particular identity or a particular set of interests. Could be a women's group or a diverse employee group, all of the above. So if you want to direct us through the poll.
Yep. So right now I'm going to open up the poll, and I will give you all just a second to cast your vote. And after a few moments, I'll share what we're seeing back with you all.
It's interesting to me, looking at the list, one thought that I had as we were writing this slide was actually, we keep using the word rising managers, rising leaders, rising executives. And I think that really gets at this idea of potential, right? So we see the potential in these folks. We really want to invest in getting them to the next level, or now that they're at this next level, to have them be successful and effective at those levels. And I think there's sort of a fragility around retention when you're bringing people up in an organization. They're getting more and more responsibility. Are you also supporting them so that they're learning what they need to learn? Yeah. I see a comment from one participant that we're building from scratch. And when you're building from scratch, I think that's a really interesting time to think about sort of a baseline. What do we need to do for everybody? It could be a values workshop to really develop a shared sense of values. It could also be executive coaching for the senior most leaders to really begin to develop a learning mindset at the top of the organization. So again, I think that idea of finding the right starting point is a really key one. Izzy, do we have enough to say any results?
Yes, we do. So I'm going to end the poll now, and we've got some interesting results to look at. It looks like 51% voted that rising leaders are the main priority for investment at this point. And then leadership teams, work teams, and rising managers all have about 38% vote. Many people chose all of the above, and surprisingly, only 11% of the vote went to the executive level. Any other thoughts on this, Kate?
No, thank you. I think this is really good information and very interesting for everyone.
Great.
Okay. It seems when I click, I shrink. So here we go. So when is the right time to invest in someone? You know, I think this is it's another good question, because when our clients want to do something, like let's just choose that rising leaders group, you know you want to work with rising leaders, but then the question is, who are those rising leaders, and how do we qualify who gets to participate, and what if we leave someone out, and what are the criteria? And so we find ourselves spending a fair amount of time in the planning process with our clients, talking about who will participate. And these are just a few ideas about what to look for when it comes to qualifying people. The first is commitment, that you really see the attitude, the energy, the dedication, the engagement that you're looking for. It's so exciting to be included in a learning and development opportunity when you are you know, engaged and dedicated. It feels like a real reward. Readiness has time and can make time. And I think one of the hardest things is when something's prepared and designed and invested in, and then people don't have the time to actually make it. And we see people coming and going, or bringing laptops, or trying to fit it in, right? So I think getting really clear on how we're going to manage that time commitment, and making sure people have the time and can prioritize it. And then have an open mind and positive attitude toward the experience. So we always ask as leadership coaches, is this person coachable? And then I think we could expand that to say, is this person ready to learn? Are they interested in self-development? Are they open to feedback? Are they essential to the future? Are they contributing in a role that's needed by the company? If you have a wing of the business that you know is not going to be there in a year, you might not want to make that investment. You might want to really think about who's kind of at the essence of the strategy and what we're trying to do. Developing him or her will strengthen the area vital to the organization, so there's a good business reason for it. And you really see that potential not only through their passion and learning, but the passion and learning about the company, about the organization. This person wants to succeed with you, and has a record of strong performance and the endorsement of a supervisor. I mean, the supervisor should also endorse that the person will be committed to the time that they can participate, so that they're understanding what they're saying yes to, and they're going to be supportive of the time it takes to participate. Okay. So as we move forward, I want to look at suggested format options by career stage. And this is really the first time I've ever sat down and really thought about why we recommend various formats at different stages. So this is original Nebo work, and I think it would be really fun to debate this sometime with all of you. But I think for today's purposes, I want to share with you some of the thinking behind it. Training. What we see with training is that it works really well for entry level and early stage career folks, and for some topics around mid-level career. It's helpful because people at those stages want to know, what do I need to know? What am I supposed to do? The training gets everybody on track. And by training, we're really thinking about skill development or some kind of knowledge piece that people need to have. We consider this to be horizontal development rather than vertical development, and I'll talk more about that later. The cohort style programs are phenomenal at developing depth and shifts. So if you're really looking for transformative outcomes, you really want a team or a group to change how they see things, how they operate, to operate at another level. A cohort style program is a great investment. It's a more expensive investment, and therefore we often see that it's applied to more senior leaders, and I think that's also appropriate given the intensity and the sort of a blend of intellectual and deep work that an individual is going to do in a program like that. Stretch assignments, as you look across the board at stretch assignments, all of us benefit from stretch assignments, and some organizations are better than others at identifying those assignments and giving those assignments, but there's really a very potentially low-cost, high-benefit way to develop people. Mentoring, similarly, developing strong mentoring culture is a great way and also a relatively economical way to support and sponsor, develop the careers of folks in your organization. We do a lot of work around mentor programs, training mentors and mentees or proteges. It doesn't have to be a formal program. It could be an informal and fun one-time event. And there's lots of ways to do this. It helps everybody, and it's advisable for anyone. Sponsorship is really, as we know, it's that type of development where we're advocating for someone. We're really taking an interest, not just an interest in their career, but opening doors and extending our networks. And that tends to be most appropriate and productive for folks who are at a more advanced career stage. One-on-one coaching, again, because of the cost, is usually used for senior and executives and sometimes for people in affinity groups. Can be used for mid-level, but it's much more rare. Executive coaching, much more commonly used for senior and executive levels. Group and peer coaching is a great solution for mid-level and rising senior level or senior level, and it's often combined with classes and conferences. Team coaching, senior and executive level, very intensive, and it really can help a team become cohesive, become effective. It's a real commitment for the team and the provider of that service. Conferences and seminars work for just about anyone, and we think that classes, classes also are a great way to invest in people. They may or may not change the world, but they can certainly develop people. And finally, web-based learning is another option, and I think in many ways web-based learning is more of a format than anything else. You can do a lot of content that way, but I would point out that senior-most leaders tend not to get the most from a web-based format. They are looking for something that can hold their attention and provide more specific value. So even though you might create really great things for senior leaders, the chances are that your senior-most executives are going to take that hour to do the webcast are fairly low in our experience. I want to look briefly at our design framework, and in our article we lay out quite a lot of detail here, so I'm going to go rather quickly. But the design framework really covers the who and the what and the how much and the formats, the content, the timing, and the feedback pieces. And this framework is a really good way for you to think about what do I need to be considering as I'm developing. So we'll begin with the objectives, defining those objectives you'd like to achieve as a result of the investment. And we recommend that you start with the end in mind. What do you want people to feel and experience? What behavior change or new skill would you like them to do? What do you want them to learn or know? And then we add, coming from that transformational leadership perspective, what's the perceptual shift you're looking for? They used to see the world this way, now they can see it that way. If you can describe those things, you're in good shape to move to the next stage, which is a budget consideration. And we've provided for you some thoughts about the costs of each of the elements we've been talking about previously. I'm not going to go through these right now, but we wanted to just give you a bit of a benchmark, especially if you're building and starting from scratch, or maybe you just want to compare your options and think about what you might get for a typical dollar. These are not hard and fast figures, but they do give a sense of what it might cost to do each of these things. And I think there's lots of economies to be found and lots of creative ways to approach this. So I'm going to move us through that, but you will have that to go back to today, where training budgets are going, we're seeing, and this is to the question that someone asked, is it surprising to see where our group is today in terms of where they want to make investments? And we've had rising leaders. And I think that management supervisor training, which is which beyond professional or industry specific training is the highest category of investment, is very much that rising leader category. So no, I don't think so surprised. And I think our executive development investment coming in today at 11% is just very close to the 12% that we see here. And again, this is just to give you sort of a benchmark as you think about your approach. So you see the comment here, it's hard to learn to dance sitting down, right? So what is it you want people to learn, and which format is actually going to make the best choice? Not everything is best taught in a classroom or in a webinar, or so how do you match content with format? And so we laid out for you a set of objectives that you might see people have, and also a set of those format options we've been talking about. And we just sort of played around with the idea that different things work better with different formats. And this is, again, mostly meant to be illustrative, but I think as you're thinking about your own investments, you might think, okay, we really want to do a cohort thing, but this is for a more junior group. Instead, let's do peer coaching and a series of classes. It will feel like a cohort, but has maybe less intensity and more focus on skills, right? So you can sort of begin to think about how your objectives and the format options work together. We're curious about what your top goal is right now, and Izzy's going to quickly do another poll.
Yep, so the poll is now live. You should see it pop up on your screen, and we're asking you, what is your top goal right now? So I will give you just a few moments to cast your vote, and then after a minute or so, we will take a look at the results. So our categories are, is your top goal to reach the most people, reach across geographies, build engagement and commitment of employees, develop your leadership team, prepare rising managers, prepare rising leaders, develop senior leaders and executives, retain key talent, provide useful know-how to employees, or offer leadership development and build a community of engaged employees. So I see the votes coming in. If you haven't voted yet, please do so in the next few seconds. All right, and I'm going to end the poll, and we will take a look at the results. So it looks like the top goal right now for most people is to build engagement and commitment of employees. And then we've got the final category, offer leadership development and build community, right up there, and prepare rising leaders, matches well with our last poll, and that's coming in at third place. Any thoughts on that, Kate, before we close
I guess
it?
one thought I do have is that this reach the most people goal is really an interesting one, because that would lend itself to a technology solution in terms of format. What we're seeing is that there's a demand for technology solutions in our work so that we can reach people across geographies and time zones. On the other hand, most companies aren't actually investing in all that much in those technologies right now. So it's not yet here. So I'm interested in the first response. And I think other comments, I think this looks fairly consistent. I think it probably, for people, some of these things combine, so the desire to retain key talent might be very related to preparing rising leaders, for example. But no, I think this is a really interesting result. And we have about maybe around 50 people on this session here today. So interesting. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move forward. So is it scalable? This is, again, just information for you, but some things are more scalable than others, with web-based learning being the most so. Training being probably right behind, can be done a bunch of ways, including web-based. Stretch assignments are scalable. everyone can reach them. Individual leadership coaching can be provided to many, many, many people. So while on the one hand it's a one-on-one, it also can be replicated across an organization very effectively. Whereas with the least scalable side and sort of the special stuff is the cohort style programs, the team coaching, maybe the sponsorship program. We'll keep going. So when it comes to the content, you want to think about what is the context, i.e. what's our context that we need people to understand in order to apply this knowledge. What is the knowledge? What are the skills we're teaching? And what is the mindset that we're really looking to develop? And I think that all four of these things combined really shape the learning objectives for your program. Who needs what? And again, you'll have a handout that includes this. But the concerns are different, although there's some similarities, they evolve as you move from group to group, from managers, leaders to executives. And I would say that the biggest shifts we see are that people at the manager level are thinking about how to establish credibility, how to delegate, how to give feedback, how to be a leader among peers, how to sustain in the midst of a very busy work life, and you know, a lot of times they're wondering, am I doing a good job at managing a team or a group? Leaders have similar concerns, but may have more responsibility, and all have this challenge of personal sustainability. Executives add to that this leading through complexity, the ability to see and articulate the future and to develop and deliver an organization that's prepared for that future, so that the complexity is high, the need for systems thinking is great. What that means to us is that the content we're teaching senior executives is going to be quite different than what we're doing with managers. I think that well-designed leadership development must take the developmental stage of participants into account. By that, developmental stages, I'm really talking about adult stage development, and this body of work coming from Keegan, from Torbert, from Suzanne Cook-Reuter, really looking at how learning continues as we are adults. And while we know that roughly 70% of the people in the workforce are at the conventional stages of development, in other words, they're focused on being experts and achievers, and that really shapes how we design and think about programs for them. They want to know skills, tools, what do they need to be good at the sort of execution level. Interestingly, leading change and leading complex organizations often requires the mindset and capacity of a post-conventional leader, someone whose definition of success is more intrinsic and internally based, someone who's able to see the larger system. And so the same topic, let's say leadership communication, can be taught in a variety of different ways to match the learning level that would be typical for folks at that stage. Now, there's not a correlation between how old you are and what stage of development you are at. Some very young people could be at a very advanced stage, and some very older people could be quite at a conventional stage. But I think that one of the things we really consistently see, we see this at the Institute for Transformational Leadership as well as through Nebo's work, is that the senior most leaders often need to be at a post-conventional stage in order to see and hold the complexity that they're leading and managing. So this is a consideration that I don't want to make it sound more complicated than it is. I think you kind of know what your leaders' gaps are and what they need to learn. And I just want to say that deliberately, from a content development perspective, those of us who do this work really are thinking about how will this land, how will this work with this particular audience, given the responsibilities and the probable stage they're at. Vertical versus horizontal development speaks to horizontal development is about, imagine growing horizontally. You're getting more skills, more knowledge, more tools. You're sort of widening your toolkit. Vertical growth is where you're actually moving from one stage of development to the next, and it's often uncomfortable. It often means getting out of your familiar comfort zone, embracing some big questions and some a feeling of uncertainty as you move into that higher stage of development from which you can operate quite differently. So good leadership cohort programs are a great way to catalyze vertical development, and vertical development is a great outcome of a cohort style program, and some kinds of coaching can really do it as well. So I just want to point this out because I think the content's not just topics, it's really about, are we going to get that behavior change and that shift, that really increased capacity in the leader. And I think I've talked to that. Okay. Last piece here is really about feedback. And in our processes, we want to know, is it working? Is the content working? Does the format work? What do people like? Are they able to see the application? We seek feedback routinely and rigorously in the design process, in the delivery process, in the post-delivery process. And we encourage you to work with whoever is providing your leadership development work as a real partner. Seeing the feedback is part of how we collaborate. And I think my favorite way of working is when we're working over more than 1 year and we can actually grow together in our understanding of what really works best for your culture and your people, and continuously refine and customize that content to that. I think what you want to think about with the feedback is to make sure you're getting it from the people who are experiencing, whether it's coaching or a leadership program, and also making sure that you're giving it to the folks who are collaborating with you in the delivery of services. As we come to the end, it's just really clear that we want you to select those best, most committed people in a transparent process that creates desire to be part of it, i.e. people want to be picked, to choose the option that hits that sweet spot between objectives, audience, budget, and format, to pay fairly to achieve your objectives and expect a lot for your dollar, and to treat your leadership development providers as partners and build impact together over time by sharing your challenges and concerns upfront and providing feedback throughout. And I think with all of that said, we've given you this tool, which is really the questions we're posing in each of these sections, and I think this is a great design tool in and of itself to ask yourself these questions as you build and develop programs. We want to just, I know we're running over time, want to just invite if there are any questions.
And Kate, as the questions come in, we had a question from one participant, and she asked, will you share more of your perspectives around investing in people who are newly promoted versus people who are talented but have issues? What if they are both valuable to success but money is limited? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I mean, I think it is, it's a trade-off, really, if money is limited. And I would say that there are a couple ways to go. I mean, you might look at this question of, what do we need most now? Do we need most this newly promoted person to hit the ground running, or do we need most for this flawed but talented, valuable person to actually gain awareness and improvement? And if the answer is sort of both, you might think about, okay, what can I do with my dollar? I have $10,000 to spend or $5,000 to spend. You know, pick up the phone and call someone like us and say, how would you deploy this with these two particular objectives that we have here? My instincts tell me that it would be a good move quite often to invest in the newly promoted person, but that the coaching could really be, it could be a focused piece. It could be an assessment, like a DISC assessment for leadership style. That's a huge amount of learning. The debrief comes with that. And then maybe 3 follow-up coaching sessions to really help them use what they've learned. So it doesn't have to be the full, big, long 6-month or 12-month coaching session. It could be really almost a starter kit to really help them at the next level. So scope can actually help. The person who has an ongoing, more intractable challenge, we might say, okay, let's really work on this over 6 months. It takes a while to gain the awareness and the confidence to make some changes that we might need to do a longer engagement for. So that's at least some ways of thinking about that. How do you measure who's committed and who has the time? I think it's, first of all, getting your head around what time commitment am I really asking for? I think of an engagement we currently have where we have 6 leaders who have been given coaching. And I'm not sure they initially saw it as a gift. It felt like one more thing to fit into their really busy calendars. And therefore, the onus was on our coaching team to demonstrate value in the first session or two, such that they would say, this is a good use of my time, and I really want to make time. I don't know if anybody there had the choice, like, would you be willing to take 6 to 8 hours over the next 6 months for coaching? But I think we don't always present the time commitment when we're saying, there's going to be a 4-part leadership development program, and you're going to spend 1 day every 2 months in that program. Can you afford the time? I think even just being asked the question drives greater accountability, and we've also seen a lot of clients do rosters and things like that to make sure that we're getting accountability for attendance. Those who come get the most from it. And I would also say that, how do you measure those who are committed? Usually that's something that your managers and supervisors can tell you, that your leaders can tell you. We used to call it fire in the belly. Who has the fire in the belly? And I think, paying attention to that as a criteria, I think is useful. How do you help leaders build nuanced skills to handle tough personnel and communication problems when you don't have the funds for individual coaching? I would suggest doing a workshop or a series of workshops. And really, there's so much to learn there. And I think that's a place where you will really get the benefit of whatever investment you do make, because the conversational skills needed to lead are at the core of leadership development, and yet no one's being taught these things in their graduate programs. And so many people, once they understand the movements of effective communication, can use them much more effectively. And I think that might be a way to go. We work with a line of leaders as a group so that each level learns the same principles. Wherever possible, yes, we like to have a cohesiveness in what we're doing. We're very interested in what's your mission, what's your vision, what are your competencies, what do you currently use for performance reviews. We want to be able to fit in and align rather than be some kind of an add-on or this extra thing. And I think when we're doing this work, people will say to us, how does this relate to the success criteria I've been given in my performance review, or the new thing the company just rolled out, right? So we do a lot of work to make sure that we're aligning the content and the approach with what you're already doing. And we will work with, we can enter wherever you need help, and we can expand from there. It's often really effective to start at the top, but sometimes the starting point is in the middle for reasons that make sense for your organization. So I know that we're over time, and we are we're ambitious with our content today. We will be following up, sending you the materials, as well as welcoming your feedback as we continue. Our next webinar will take place in December, and we're going to actually really zoom in on coaching. The topic is getting the most out of coaching, how to really understand how coaching's evolved over these past couple of decades, and what are some of the best practices, not just for being coached, but actually for managing and sponsoring coaching engagements. And we hope you'll join us for that. Thank you very much for being with us today and for participating in this webinar. We apologize for some of the technical glitches. We really appreciate your attendance and your participation. Thank you.
Right. Thank you all. And as Kate said, we will follow up tomorrow with a recording of the webinar, as well as Nebo's article and framework with some of the information you heard today. Please make sure to join us next time, and have a wonderful rest of your day.